We continue to get more clarity on what the Titans will do at number one. We'll look through the entire top five of the draft order, and we had a couple of notable retirements around the NFL over the weekend. NFL Spotlight starts now. Welcome in. It is the Monday, April 7th edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I am your host, Ari Meirov. A interesting weekend in the NFL. Of course, on Friday, the pro day for Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. We'll talk a little bit about that here today. A lot more of it tomorrow with our special Spotlight guest of the week, which we will be revealing later today on my X page. But let's go around the NFL for now to start this Monday. Let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. Ben, what is going on? How are you? It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you too, Ari. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what we were just hearing from you here at the top of the show, and that being the Colorado Showcase. Not a pro day when you've got Deion Prime Sanders around there. And on Friday, we got to see Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter. Both of them were out there participating in the pro day. Leaving a lot of evaluators, though, was the big thought that Travis Hunter really is one of one. And it seems like he is the clear-cut top talent of the draft. Doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be going first overall, but quite the unicorn. People were a little bit more split on what to take and what to make of what Shedeur Sanders did. I'm not talking about patting the ball. People need to stop talking about patting the ball. It's such an incredibly dumb discussion to be having. But anyway, he threw the ball. We saw his arm strength out there. People had different opinions on that. But we saw all of that happen. Shedeur Sanders was expected to have a workout with the Tennessee Titans. That has now been canceled, which is going to be an indicator for a lot of people that people will now take that Cam Ward is expected to be the first overall pick in the upcoming draft. Is there really a ripple effect to this, or is it more just reaffirming what we already kind of figured?
Ben, I think like as the last month and a half have been going on here, and the Titans and this new regime there, especially in the front office, have been trying to get to know each other and go through the entire evaluation of the draft. They've come to the realization that Cam Ward is their guy, and this just reaffirms it. I mean, they had him at the combine, they had him in their facility, they went to his pro day, they took him out to dinner, they brought the owner out to meet with him. All the signs point to Cam Ward going number one to Tennessee in the NFL draft, and Shedeur Sanders or the Titans, whoever it is, canceling this upcoming private workout that he had scheduled for later this week just confirms it. And the Friday showcase at Colorado, which, you know, the Giants had a big presence, the Browns had a big presence of people there, the Titans had some people there, but if you're going to take Shedeur Sanders or even Travis Hunter at number one, I would imagine you want your head coach to be there. Brian Callahan was not there in Boulder, Colorado. And of course, with this private workout being canceled as well, I think it tells us pretty much that they have locked in on a guy over here. I do believe the Titans are going to go out there and publicly tell us that we're still listening to trade offers. And if that crazy offer comes in, that they will definitely consider it. But all signs point to Cam Ward, the Miami quarterback, going number one and becoming the new quarterback for their new GM, Mike Borgonzi, gets to pick his own guy. And Brian Callahan, the head coach, keep in mind last year when he was hired, he inherited Will Levis. So he gets to pick his own quarterback as well. And that is now slated to be Cam Ward, barring something unforeseen. As for Shedeur Sanders, the guest that we have coming on tomorrow for our special spotlight guest of the week, he was actually at Boulder, Colorado. Knows Shedeur Sanders pretty well. We'll reveal who that guest is here later today on my X page. But we're going to talk more about him. But the entire conversation about Shedeur just becomes fascinating because the Browns at number two, and, you know, they went out there and they, you know, traded for Kenny Pickett. And there are murmurs around the NFL that they want to trade potentially for Kirk Cousins after the draft. The Giants going out there and signing Jameis and Russell Wilson, both of them on one-year contracts. The element and the idea that if he does not go at number two or number three, where he does go in this draft It is a fascinating question. And come Thursday night, in a couple of weeks from now, I mean, ESPN, NFL Network, all the cameras are going to be. I don't think Shador is going to be there in Green Bay, but I'm sure he's going to have a camera wherever he is, and they're going to keep on panning to him. So that conversation becomes a fascinating one. I'm not going to rule out the Browns. I'm not going to rule out the Giants, but Ben, I know we're about to go through my top 5 picks in this draft right now, what I think is going to happen as of Monday, April 7th. So let's go through that now, and let's see where we are.
Yeah, and like we just discussed here, we both are in agreement. Cam Ward's going to be the first pick in the draft. So let's just go ahead and jump to that second pick. And what you were a little bit getting there is that this isn't necessarily just like Ari's picking like matchmaker or anything like that. This is going to be based more off of intel and like what the room feels like, right?
Yeah, so every year for the last 5 years now, I used to hate mock drafts. I'm still not a big fan of them, especially ones that are done, in late January and February before the combine and ones before free agency. I think most of those are a waste of time, but I usually drop one the week of the draft, and I'm kind of happy with mine over the last couple of years because it's impossible to go perfect, but to get, 10, 11, 12 picks to actually nail it and get them to the right teams, it's kind of impressive in the mock draft world. So I've been happy with mine over the years. I'll have another one here before the draft, the week of the draft in a couple of weeks. But right now, I want to go through the top 5 of what I think is going to happen as we sit here right now, subject to change. The stuff is fluid. You'd be surprised, but teams change their minds on the morning of the draft, even if they're picking very high. There are a lot of stories. Maybe one day we'll do a story time about that. But right now, the way I look at this, number 2 in Cleveland, I don't get the vibe that Shador is the pick there. I look at them right now with Myles Garrett coming back. They want to win this year. I think Abdul Carter, the Penn State pass rusher, would be the pick for them right now if they were drafting on Monday, April 7th. Having another really elite pass rusher across from Myles Garrett. They've tried to find somebody across from Myles over the years, always going the veteran route. They had Zadarius Smith over the years. They've signed a bunch of guys. They've used free agency. They've used the draft. I think getting a young guy to come in, and Abdul Carter, who on some boards is the best player in this draft, other boards is Travis Hunter. He makes a lot of sense. And like I mentioned before, I think the Browns, who have Kenny Pickett currently on this roster, are looking at Kirk Cousins and the Falcons, who would like to trade him as the veteran quarterback for them after this draft. To trade for him, he becomes the quarterback. We reinforce this defense with Jim Schwartz, with Myles Garrett back after he requested that trade, Abdul Carter on the other side. That is what I think happens in number 2. Now you go to number 3 of the Giants. We mentioned them. They signed Jameis. Giants signed Russell Wilson. They're not desperate to take a quarterback here. They could go with the best player available, or they could be a team over here that says, you know what, we want to be able to get our quarterback. We know that the head coach and GM there, they're kind of on the hot seat over here. For right now, I'm going to give them Shador Sanders here going number 3. I know they have Russell Wilson. I know they have Jameis Winston. I look at them where they're going to start the year with Russell Wilson and eventually, whenever the time is right, go to Shador Sanders. But I am not locked in on this pick. I could see them going Travis Hunter. I could see them doing a bunch of different options over here. But the idea of picking both quarterbacks and having both quarterbacks on the roster lets them not get desperate over here and force a pick. I did mention this with Charles Davis last week. The belief around the NFL, and I've not been able to confirm this all the way, but from what I've gathered, it feels pretty true. The Giants had a presence at every single Colorado Buffaloes game this past year. They've done extensive work. They were at the Shrine Bowl where Shador was at. They met with him at the Combine. They've had him in the building. They obviously went to his pro day. Initially, for what it's worth, Brian Daboll was not scheduled to be there on Friday. Last minute, he ended up arriving there and being there as well. The Giants, I believe, had 14 people there at Boulder, Colorado. That means they could also take Travis Hunter. Maybe they like the other Colorado player. But for now, I'm going to give Shador Sanders number 3 to the Giants. And if they believe he's the quarterback for the next 10 plus years, you make that pick regardless of your board. Number 4, the Patriots, I'm going to give them the other Colorado player. That is Travis Hunter. Where he plays, receiver or corner. We'll talk about this also tomorrow, but I kind of feel like that depends on the team and where he ends up. And I'm sure Travis wants to play both sides of the ball. That's what he did in college. But I look at New England, you have Christian Gonzalez, you signed Carlton Davis to this big contract in free agency. You already have your two outside corners. You look at their receiver room, it's Stephon Diggs and a bunch of guys. So with Drake May and that team right now, I think you go out there, bring in Travis Hunter, have another elite receiver in my mind and on most scouts' boards. They would have Travis Hunter as a number one receiver in this draft. Forget about what he could do at corner as well. And then you sprinkle him in at corner, whether it's a third down package or whatever for New England. I think other teams would love to use him at corner first and then receiver. Each team has a different preference. Some teams might be okay with using him at both sides of the ball. We'll see what New England does if they make that pick. But he is the best available player at this point in the draft, number 4. I think he goes somewhere in the top 4, and I think his slide would end in New England if he was there at number 4 in a couple of weeks. Number 5, the Jaguars, no one really talks about them with this pick. Everyone has been focused on the top 4, but Jaguars number 5, new GM and James Gladstone, who is an excellent young mind in that front office now, a new head coach in Liam Cohen. I have them going with the interior of the defensive line. Michigan defensive tackle Mason Graham. I mean, this pairing just makes a lot of sense. It's a great fit. He fills a need, and he is kind of as steady as it gets in this class. So they already have Josh Hines Allen, of course, on one side, the former number one overall pick, and Trevon Walker on the other side. I think this pick makes a lot of sense for Jacksonville and what they're trying to build. He is, again, as steady of a pick as it gets in this draft with what he did at Michigan. Not a flashy pick, but somebody who definitely could help that Jaguars team there in Jacksonville. So as of April 7th, that would be my top 5. Again, it's subject to change. We still have a lot of time here. Teams and scouts are all coming back into their facilities to have their draft meetings right now, put the finishing touches to their boards, and of course, a lot more meetings on the way. So as of April 7, I have a Cam Ward 1 to the Titans, Abdul Carter to the Browns, Shador Sanders to the Giants, Travis Hunter to the Patriots, and then Mason Graham to the Jaguars at number 5.
Okay, now I have to ask for the bonus one because I just love talking about this guy. Does Ashton Jeanty go 6 to the Raiders?
It's a fun question. It really is. I'm now ready to put him there. I think of the Raiders GM and John Spytek and who he is and where he came from in Tampa Bay. They drafted Bucky Irving last year in, I believe it was round 3 or round 4, and he had 1,000 yards rushing. This is the deepest running back class by far that we've had in years. Ashton Jeanty is hands down the best running back in this draft, but there are so many glaring holes on this roster that I'm not ready to give them Ashton Jeanty at number 6. I do know their head coach, Pete Carroll, loves his running backs, and he, of course, drafted Charbonnet in round 2 and Kenneth Walker in round 2 and Rashad Penny in round 1 in Seattle. And keep in mind, Pete Carroll had control over the draft, over the GM there. So those were his picks. But I look at how deep this running back class is and how many holes this Raiders roster has. I don't think they're going to go running back. I would not give them a running back if I was picking right now. He would help Geno Smith. They do have a pretty decent offensive line, considering how people look at them. I think they need another receiver. With Jacoby Myers, you obviously love Brock Bowers. I don't think you're taking a receiver at number 6 either, unless it's Travis Hunter. But I would not go running back right now with them. I would go maybe pass rusher or somewhere else over there for the Raiders right now if you were making me pick right now.
Glad I asked, like the rationale. All right, let's move on to the retirement portion of the show, starting with a big one that came down the pipe on Friday, that being Julio Jones. He did not play this past season after spending time with the Eagles the year before. Julio Jones, his career kind of fizzled out towards the ends after leaving the Falcons, but he still ends it as a 7-time Pro Bowler, and he also led the NFL in receiving yards twice. Quite the career, made a Super Bowl, didn't win it, thanks Patriots, but quite the career nonetheless. So what is going to be your lasting memory of Julio Jones?
You mentioned the Super Bowl 28-3. I mean, he had that crazy catch that no one kind of talks about in that Super Bowl where he got them into field goal range. And of course, we know what happened after that with Matt Ryan taking a sack, a holding penalty, getting out of field goal range, and so on and so on. But he had that catch in the Super Bowl, which should have iced the game with a field goal to end it and no comeback happening. But when I think of Julio Jones, one of the great receivers of his era, for a long time, it was Is it Julio? Is it Antonio Brown? Who's the best receiver in football? 1A, 1B throughout those, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018 time around the NFL. But go back to his draft. I'll never forget his draft, 2011 NFL draft. Falcons are coming off a 13-3 season and they're picking number 27. And they make this gigantic trade up to number 6 with the Browns to take Julio Jones. And they gave up a lot to make that deal, Ben. I remember it was a first round pick, a second round pick, a fourth round pick, a future 1, and a future 4 to move up 21 spots for Julio Jones. And their GM at the time was Thomas Dimitroff. And he asked a lot of people, should he do this? And keep in mind, people forget this. Julio Jones was not the hands down number 1 receiver in that draft. That was AJ Green, who went number 4 to the Bengals. So you were not even trading for the number 1 receiver in this draft. They, of course, had him as number 1 receiver on their board, but throughout the NFL, look at mocks. Everyone had AJ Green higher, and Thomas Dimitroff, I remember he said this on a podcast a few years ago. He even asked his former boss and Bill Belichick, hey, what do you think of me doing this gutsy move, moving up 21 spots, giving up all these picks, coming off this 13-3 season? I feel like, we have Roddy White, we have a really good offense, but I feel like we're missing this guy. Bill Belichick said, I would not do that trade. And Dimitroff ended up doing it a couple of weeks later on draft night, making that big move from 27 to 6. And of course, it ended up being a slam dunk, a home run, a grand slam, whatever you want to call it. And one of the great Falcons in their franchise's history, one of the best receivers of his era. I mean, of course, made a lot of money as well. One of the best extensions in football the last number of years was him signing this crazy 3-year, $66 million extension when he was on the back end of his career down there in Atlanta. But his career fizzled out, like you mentioned, Ben, was traded to Tennessee. Atlanta got I believe it was a second-round pick or a third-round pick and a fourth-round pick in that trade, was there for a year, ended up bouncing around in Tampa Bay, finished his career a year ago in Philadelphia. But one of the great receivers, and in my mind, he should be a first-ballot Hall of Famer 5 years from now in 2030, whenever that time comes.
All right, and let's talk about the other retirement that took place this weekend. It was a big one, and for a guy that is still having, a relatively big impact in the NFL, and that's Terron Armstead. Terron Armstead, that was a tough word to say. Terron Armstead of the Miami Dolphins. He decides to call it quits after 135 career games, 5-time Pro Bowl selection. We knew this one had been weighing on his mind. There had been some cap moves that were taking place with the Dolphins that could ultimately help relieve some of the cap stuff were he to go ahead and make this decision, which he now does. He was an impact player for a long time, and I'm just curious, what are you going to remember most about him?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you're right. The Dolphins have been prepared for this since the start of the offseason. Mike McDaniel openly said it, that they are operating as if he's not going to be back for 2025. He is right. The plan right now in Miami, for what it's worth, is 2024 second-round pick Patrick Paul will take over at left tackle, who, by the way, had been getting mentored by Armstead over this last year. So not too bad for him to have someone like him in his corner since entering the NFL. But when you think of the great left tackles during the 2010s and early 2020s, you think of, Joe Thomas and Trent Williams and Tyron Smith and, Jason Peters, David Bakhtiari, but Terron Armstead is right there. And he was one of the best. And the thing about Armstead is that he's retiring before his age 34 season, which is, I would say, it's a little early for nowadays in the NFL. Guys are able to play into their late 30s. Sometimes we saw Andrew Whitworth, for example, play into his 40s. Jason Peters, who just retired this offseason, also played into his 40s. But this is somebody who, it's not like he doesn't love the game of football. He loves the game of football, but he has dealt with so many injuries throughout the course of his career. He has never played a full season in his career. And you're going to be like, oh, wow, this guy was so injury prone. But people don't know the amount of injuries that this man battled through and played through. It's the amount that most players in the NFL, there are a lot of really tough players in the league, would not have been able to play to. I mean, he went through knee issues, foot issues, hip, pec, shoulder, concussions, toe, everything throughout the course of his career. There was a point I remember in 2023 where he was on the injury report for the Dolphins with 4 different injuries. I've never seen that before. He had toe, hip, knee, and pec on the injury report, and he still played with those injuries on the injury report. It was kind of crazy. So he also revealed this on Saturday night when he officially announced his retirement. Before this past season, he was getting his knee checked out with a doctor, and the doctor told him, listen, you've gone through all the therapy, you've done all the surgeries. At this point, you need knee replacement surgery. Like, there's nothing else. And he was like, I'm not doing that. I'm playing this year. And he played this past season, appearing in 15 games. He did say at his party on Saturday night that he'll figure that out here later, but he literally was told to replace his knee and still play this past year, 15 games. And it kind of reminds me a little bit. I spoke to Terron in February of 2024, and I asked him about all the injuries that he's had over the course of his career, and if there's any injuries that he could tell us that he's played through, which was crazy. This is what he said.
Listen. I'm telling you, when I tell my story one of these good days, it'll be people will read it, they will watch it, they will listen, because I've I've suited up with some situations that people have no idea, and that's the crazy part, is it's my job for them to not know. I can't go out there and look injured or look, if I'm playing, regardless of what I'm actually dealing with. And injuries have been a part of my career, Unfortunately, I've dealt with a ton. That's the cards I've been dealt, and I played through a lot. And when I'm able to tell my story, you guys will be shocked.
Wow.
Well, yeah. So the career is over now, and I'm looking forward to hearing those stories because Sean Payton, Drew Brees, like all those guys would say, like the stuff that this dude plays through is not normal. And now his career is over, whether he's writing a book or doing a podcast or doing a doc or whatever. I want to watch it. I want to hear it. I want to see it. So he went through a lot, a true warrior, 12 seasons, 5 Pro Bowls, 7-time team captain, was an all-pro for a year. We mentioned all the great tackles that he had to go against to get an all-pro. He was able to get one in 2018, and also a true professional on and off the field, a mentor for many guys in the Miami locker room, in the New Orleans locker room, just a really great player, and he finally calls it a career. And whenever he wants to reveal it, I'll be ready to listen because he literally went through a lot. I guarantee you he did not want to retire right now, but his body went through so much. And like he said on Saturday night, I have to be a father, a husband, and everything, and now it's time. So a great career comes to an end for a player who was one of the best at what he does.
Sounds like a potential spotlight guest in the future. Make sure you guys are following along. Hit follow. Maybe we'll have him on and you'll get a notification if you turn it on, because that's also a great thing to do for this podcast. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, we would love to get him on. Maybe we'll try to get him on here at some point later in the offseason when things quiet down. But we will have a spotlight guest here tomorrow on the show. Like I said earlier, we will reveal that on my X page later today. And that will do it here for our Monday, April 7 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. We will be back here tomorrow with the special guest, more NFL talk, more NFL draft talk, and much more. We will see you all here tomorrow morning.